Attention, everybody. The views and opinions expressed on the show are not necessarily those of Acts Ministry, Acts Media Group, and or their affiliate and subordinate ministries and or nonprofits. It's that time again. It's the happy hour with your host, Dr. Paul and Miss Nancy Collins. Take it away.
Well, good morning, and instead of my usual beginning for this broadcast, I'm going to begin this way. 19 years ago, right about now, I watched the Twin Towers, New York City, come crumbling down.
I know that's right.
It was a typical morning for me as a college professor. I was up, I'd shaved, showered, had breakfast, having an extra cup of coffee, watching the television, and I saw Charlie Gibson and Diane Sawyer, co-host of Good Morning America, standing in front of a plate glass window with the view of New York City and the Twin Towers over their shoulders. While they were giving their opening for that segment of Good Morning America, they were unaware of an airplane that flew into one of the towers. Someone brought it to their attention. It upset the Good Morning America show. And then they watched as the second plane flew into the towers. I watched all of that live as it was happening, sad to say, in color, and the towers came down. I went to the college to teach my first class, which was a class in philosophy, and I taught it. And then my second class was Religions of the World at the far end of the campus. I walked to the far end of the campus. When I walked in, instead of starting with chapter 1, where we had been working for a week or two, I said we will move over in our textbook to chapter 14. Today, we will look at the Muslim religion. So that was the way it was for me on September 11th, 2001. Like so many things in my life, as I get older, it seems like yesterday, but it's been 19 years. A number of things happened as a result of 9/11. First of all, as a reminder for those of you who are young enough that you haven't really studied history, 19 Muslim militants associated with the Islamic extremist group Al-Qaeda hijacked 4 airplanes and carried out suicide attacks against targets in the United States. 2 of the planes were flown into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in New York City. A 3rd plane hit the Pentagon just outside Washington, D.C., and the 4th plane crashed in a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Almost 3,000 people were killed during the 9/11 terrorist attacks, which triggered major U.S. initiatives to combat terrorism and defined the presidency of George Walker Bush. In the wake of security fears raised by the attacks of 9/11, and the mailing of letters containing anthrax, which is a terrible thing, killed 2 and infected 17, the Homeland Security Act of 2002 created the Department of Homeland Security. It was signed into law by President George W. Bush on November 25, 2002. Today, the Department of Homeland Security is a cabinet office responsible for preventing terror attacks, border security, immigrations, and customs, and disaster relief and prevention. The National Commission on Terrorist Attacks upon the United States was formed. The bipartisan, otherwise known as 9/11 Commission, was charged with investigating the events that led up to September 11th. The 9/11 Commission report was released on July 22, 2004. It named Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the accused mastermind behind 9/11, the principal architect of the 9/11 attacks. Mohammed led propaganda operations for al-Qaeda from 1999 to 2001. He was captured on March the 1st, 2003 by the Central Intelligence Agency and Pakistan's Inter-Services Intelligence and interrogated before being imprisoned in Guantanamo Bay detention camp with 4 other accused terrorists charged with 9/11 related war crimes. Now, there was an economic impact of 9/11. The 9/11 attacks had an immediate negative effect on the U.S. economy. Many Wall Street institutions, including the New York Stock Exchange, were evacuated during the attacks. On the first day of trading after the attacks, the market fell 7.1%, or 684 points. New York City's economy alone lost 143,000 jobs a month and $2.8 billion in wages in the first 3 months. The heaviest losses were in finance and air transportation, which accounted for 60% of lost jobs. The estimated cost of the World Trade Center damage is $60 billion, that's with a B, $60 billion. The cost to clean the debris at Ground Zero was $750 million. Those of you who are young enough that history has not been a major part of your interest, this is important for you. Mm-hmm. And I hope that you will tell somebody else to catch this program as it's rerun over and over through Acts Media Group, YouTube, etc. Because they need to know this, not just today, but tomorrow and many tomorrows to come. Thousands of first responders, that's firemen, policemen, medical people, working and living in Lower Manhattan near Ground Zero were exposed to toxic fumes and particles emanating from the towers as they burned and fell. By the year 2018, 10,000 people were diagnosed with 9/11 related cancer. Now, we have, as a part of our Acts Media Group, and they are dear friends of ours, Jeff Haberer and his wife Peggy Lee Brennan. They are New York performers, have been, and the New York area residents, and I'm sure they remember 9/11 very well. And Jeff is here today running the studio for us. We're honored to have him do that. From 2001 to 2004, over $7 billion in compensation was given to families of the 9/11 victims and the 2,680 people injured in the attacks. Funding was renewed on January 2, 2011, when President Barack Obama signed the James Zadroga 9/11 Health and Compensation Act into law. Named for James Zadroga, a New York City police officer who died of respiratory disease he contracted after rescuing people from the rubble at Ground Zero. The law continued health monitoring and compensation for 9/11 responders and survivors. We're getting closer now to our time. In 2015, funding for the treatment of 9/11 related illness was renewed for 5 more years at a total of $7.4 billion. The Victim Compensation Fund was set to stop accepting claims in December 2020. That is yet to arrive. On July 29, 2019, President Donald J. Trump signed a law authorizing support for the September 11 Victim Compensation Fund through 2092. Wow. Previously, administrators had cut benefits by up to 70% as the $7.4 billion fund depleted. Vocal lobbyists for the fund included Jon Stewart, he's a well-known television personality, 9/11 first responder John Field, and retired New York Police Department detective and 9/11 responder Luis Alvarez, who died of cancer 18 days after testifying before Congress. Mm-hmm. President Trump did a fine thing in promoting and putting into action an extension of that compensation fund through the year 2092. Mm-hmm. On December 18, 2001, Congress approved naming September 11 Patriot Day to commemorate the anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. In 2009, Congress named September 11 a National Day of Service and Remembrance. And this morning, when we turned the TV off to come here to the studio, they were still reading the names and ringing the bell at the memorial in New York City. The first memorials to September 11 came in the immediate wake of the attacks, with candlelight vigils and flower tributes at U.S. embassies around the world. In Great Britain, Queen Elizabeth sang the American national anthem during the changing of the guard at Buckingham Palace. Rio de Janeiro put up billboards showing the city's Christ the Redeemer statue embracing the New York City skyline. For the first anniversary of the attacks in New York City in 2002, 2 bright columns of light were shot up into the sky from where the Twin Towers once stood. The tribute in light then became an annual installation run by the Municipal Art Society of New York on clear nights. These beams are visible from over 60 miles away.
Wow.
A World Trade Center site memorial competition was held to select an appropriate permanent memorial to the victims of 9/11. The winning design by Michael Arad, Reflecting Absence is what it's called, now sits outside the museum in an 8-acre park. 8 acres in New York City is a lot of space. It consists of 2 reflecting pools with waterfalls rushing down where the Twin Towers once rose into the sky. The names of all 2,983 victims are engraved on the 152 bronze panels surrounding the pools, arranged by where individuals were on the day of the attacks. So co-workers and people on the same flight are memorialized together. The site was open to the public September 11th, 2011 to commemorate the 10-year anniversary of 9/11. Well, the National September 11 Memorial and Museum followed, opening on the original World Trade Center site in May of 2014. The Freedom Tower, also on the original World Trade Center site, opened in November 2014 as the tallest building in the nation because of the spire and antenna on the top. A total of 1,776 feet in commemoration of the Declaration of Independence in 1776. Well, Nancy, I'm going to have to take a moment here to cough because I have a tickle right here. I'm going to do that, then I'm going to talk to you. As you can see, this program is not canned, it is casual. Nancy, you were watching this morning the reading of the names and the scrolling of the names on the bottom of the TV screen, and you noticed something in particular that struck me, and that's about how many names started with the letter
F.
All kinds of, we were wondering, anybody left in New York with that their last name begins with the letter F? There were dozens and dozens and dozens of names. They just kept coming and coming and coming of people whose last name would be Fowler or Folks or whatever.
Fiorelli.
So it's been quite an impressive thing. Now, we want to remember the World Trade Center and the 9/11 Commission, all those things today. But I need to do something that I should have done a week or so ago and didn't do. And I don't know if anybody did it here on our programs at Axe Media Group or not. But commemorating Labor Day, I don't know, I should have said something about it, but the greatest source for information about Labor Day, anything historical, is theamericanminute.com. And that is put out just about daily by Dr. William J. Federer, F-E-D-E-R-E-R. There's another last name beginning with an F.
Yeah.
And his research is impeccable, and you're free to use it, reproduce it, hand it out, whatever. But he talks about the time that the United States was founded. Most people were farmers or worked in trades, and here were the trades, some of them. Baker, butcher, carpenter, cabinet maker, upholsterer, tailor, milliner, that would be a clothes merchant, cobbler would be a shoemaker, chandler, that's a candle maker, a cooper was a barrel maker, and people whose last name is Cooper, it's because somebody in their heritage and their background made barrels, was a cooper. Wheelwright, that was a wheel craftsman. Blacksmith, gunsmith, printer, and apothecary. Well, apothecary had to do with putting together pharmaceutical items. And so we'd have to, I believe that's right. Anyway, we have our friend Bobby, the lady pharmacist, back on sometime. We'll ask her about that. Then the Industrial Revolution began in the late 18th century. That'd be the late, for those of you who are graduates of universities, the late 18th century is 1700s. At that time, coal was mined in Britain, but mines kept filling up with water. Scottish inventor, my heritage is Scottish. The Collins name goes all the way back to the Rutherfords, 1600 in Scotland. Scottish inventor James Watt came up with an invention to pump water out of mines, a steam pump. Steam was soon harnessed in the early 19th century to not just power pumps, but railroad steam engines, steamboats, and textile manufacturing machines. Now, I take great delight in being 85 years young and remembering things. And I remember the steam locomotives in my hometown of Moberly, Missouri. Wabash Railroad was a big deal there, big deal. Many tracks. And especially during World War II, those trains were running all the time. And they were belching steam and smoke. And in the wintertime, we had good snows then, but they didn't stay white very long because all of the ashes and soot coming down from the locomotives soon turned it pretty dark, black and dirty. But I remember steam engines very well. This led, of course, to the creation of factories which could mass produce items inexpensively. European manufactured products were imported into America, but soon Americans built factories. Originally, there was no federal income tax. How about that? And there were excise taxes on items like salt and tobacco and liquor, and tariff taxes on imports from European factories. And that's how the government was supported. Tariff taxes made European products more expensive, motivating consumers to buy products manufactured in America. Now, we have this problem of too much stuff that we consume is manufactured overseas. Most of America's factories were located in northern states. The tariff taxes that helped the northern states hurt the southern states, as the South was predominantly agricultural and had few factories to protect. Now you're beginning to see why there was a division between North and South in this nation. At one point, nearly 90% of the federal budget came from tariff taxes collected at southern ports. Now you know why the North wanted to hold on to the South. That's why the federal government was determined to defeat the Confederacy, one of the reasons. This fueled animosity between the states leading up to the Civil War. After the Civil War, the North passed even more tariff taxes, which successfully allowed northern factories to grow enormous on the backs of the Confederacy. Manufacturers produced items like clothes, glass, dishes, and farm tools for a fraction of the previous cost. Machines freed women up from tedious daily tasks such as hand weaving thread and hand sewing cloth and hand washing clothes. Instead of carrying water from a well, pumps and pipes brought water directly into homes. New ways of making stronger iron and steel led to the building of bridges, skyscrapers, steamboats, and mining machinery. Railroads began taking people safely and inexpensively across the entire nation, opening up unprecedented mobility and opportunity. I've ridden trains. What an experience. I rode trains when they were steam locomotives, and then I rode trains after they went to diesel, and they called them streamliners. Nancy, you and I, one of these days, we need to take a train trip. And I'm sorry, Steve McAllister and Jeff with a G, it won't be just that little short run out of Branson. We're talking about a real train trip. We're going to get on Amtrak and go someplace. Even if it's wrong, we're going to go. Okay? And we're going to go up in that car where you can look out and see for miles and enjoy the scenery.
Yeah, it might be long enough where we would have a meal or something.
Well, I was just going to say, we're not going to pack a lunch. We're going to splurge. We're going to eat on the train in the dining room.
That's right.
I mean, we're going to do it up right. if you're going to do something, whatever it is, do it right, even if it's wrong.
We'll be like little kids.
Now we're back to the happy hour. Isn't that amazing how we start out and we had such serious stuff, and now we just gradually bring it around to where we create a little smile on somebody's face. All right. Inventions and advances in manufacturing made more goods available at cheaper prices. Speaking of inventions, do you know that most people, not all people, but most people are just one idea away from being wealthy? And to be wealthy in the United States today requires net assets of $2.7 million. And most people are just one idea away from being wealthy. I'm waiting and watching and listening and thinking, and I'm listening to the Holy Spirit because He can give me an idea. And the Holy Spirit gives me an idea, then I could be truly wealthy, and then I could be very supportive, more supportive of the kingdom of God. Anyway, these inventions resulted in Americans experiencing the fastest increase in the standard of living of any people in world history. We live better than anybody else on the planet has ever lived. Mm-hmm. I remember when we didn't have indoor plumbing.
I do too.
I was born in a house that had 3 rooms, a kitchen, living room, and a bedroom. And it was very small.
So tell how many people were in that house.
Well, when I was born, I was person number 10 in that house. And the bedroom was like 8 by 8. It wasn't very big. Living room was about the size of this little studio area. The kitchen was barely could qualify as a kitchen. It was a counter space. So we had those 3 rooms, and I say a path with a P, not a bath, path, because we had an outhouse. Do you know what some of the names were for outhouses?
Privy.
Privy, right. And some people called them toilets.
Or turlets.
Yeah, we had an old buddy out in Utah. He called them turlets. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, we have a standard of living now that means most people have running water and they have central heat and air and all that kind of stuff. Unless they live up there around John and Lydia Carpenter. By the way, hello, John and Lydia up in Alaska. You're probably in the civilized part of Alaska. Well, you're probably in the developed part. It's all civilized now. You're in the developed part. We watch those below zero programs on TV and The Last Alaskans and all that. Man, they live a pretty simple lifestyle. Now, if you want to see simplicity, come visit us in Springfield, Missouri, otherwise known as Springburg, USA, and we'll give you directions to Amish country. Not that many miles away, 2 different directions. But one of them has all kinds of retail establishments, and you'll have an opportunity to sample the simple life. Because they do indeed lead a simple life, and it's a beautiful life. I've said, Nancy, that I could live in Amish country if I could have my big screen TV and electric lights and my cell phone. I wouldn't make a very good Amish person. Anyway, see you fellas. Have a blessed day. I'm waving bye to Jeff with a G and Steve McAllister. Anyway, factories had a continual source of workers from the millions of immigrants who not only got a job but learned the language and trade skills. Some of my relatives were immigrants. The Irish part of my family, the Scottish part, they were here among the originals. Anyway, President Grover Cleveland dedicated the Statue of Liberty in 1886 to welcome immigrants. Well, I could go on and on and on with information from Bill Federer in the American Minute. I strongly urge you to look him up online and enjoy history. He goes on with this entire presentation to talk about then something of some interest perhaps that you may not know. The corporate income tax was started in 1894, the personal income tax in 1914, and the inheritance estate tax in 1916. Now, everywhere you look, there's a tax. Even the license plate on your vehicle is really a tax, and the driver's license that you carry is really a tax, and the list goes on and on and on. Anyway, he contrasts this development then with the development of socialism and communism. And as recently as in 1979, Bernie Sanders produced a documentary praising Eugene Debs. Now, Debs was a traitor to his country, and he will never be pardoned during the administration of Woodrow Wilson, he said. And the next president, Warren G. Harding, also did not pardon this man, Debs. And the White House he wrote released a statement, there's no question of his guilt. He's a dangerous man, calculated to mislead the unthinking and affording excuse for those with criminal intent. And Bernie Sanders produced a documentary praising this man, hung a portrait of him in the City Hall of Burlington, Vermont, and dedicated the plaque, and that's when he was mayor, and then dedicated the plaque to him in his congressional office.
Bernie Sanders did that?
Yes, Bernie Sanders, yeah. Bernie Sanders is a long-standing socialist, been a socialist most of his life. After Vladimir Lenin organized the Bolshevik Revolution overthrowing Russia's government, Lenin formed the Communist International in 1919, and this persuaded some members of Eugene Debs' Socialist Party of America that Bernie Sanders adores.
So that Socialist Party still going on in this country?
Yes.
Whoa.
It inspired them to break off and form, they broke away from the Socialist Party of America and formed the Communist Party USA, and they ran candidates for U.S. president every year from 1920 till they decided to support Democrat President Franklin D. Roosevelt during World War II, because Roosevelt had allied himself with Joseph Stalin.
Whoa.
Okay. Chicago's statue dedicated to the police officers who were killed in the 1886 Haymarket riot was blown up on October the 6th, 1969 by Bill Ayers and Eric Mann's militant group, Weatherman Underground. Most people have forgotten about it. Look them up online, Weatherman, during their days of rage. Weatherman member Bill Ayers later helped launch the political career of a young Illinois state senator, Barack Obama.
Whoa.
Bill Ayers and his lady friend were people who believed that they could bomb buildings and get away with it. And guess what? They did. They got away with it.
So they're pickles behind the scenes.
Right. And Bill Ayers, the last I knew, was still teaching, I think, at the University of Chicago. He got off scot-free. So did his woman. Bill Ayers.
What he does is he teaches, but he implants ideas and knowledge and so forth, all in the negative to the nth degree into people.
It's amazing how many university students admire Bill Ayers almost to the point of worshiping him. It's amazing. Bill Ayers stated, I'm a radical, leftist, small c communist. Maybe I'm the last communist who's willing to admit it. The ethics of communism still appeal to me. I don't like Lenin as much as the early Marx. Weatherman member Eric Mann helped train Patrice Cullors, one of the founders of Black Lives Matter. That's a big name. Now, folks, I'm not offering opinions here. I'm not offering advice. I'm just reporting what is public fact, public information. Anybody has access to this. Please don't think that I'm taking a stand on anything when I point out that the Communist Party supported President Franklin Roosevelt and that Bill Ayers helped launch the political career of Barack Obama, etc. I'm not. I'm just reporting historical fact. This man, Cullors, who was one of the founders of Black Lives Matter, stated in 2015, myself and Alicia in particular are trained organizers. That means his wife. We are trained Marxists. Now, Karl Marx was the founder of the Communist Party. We are super versed on sort of ideological theories. So there you have the founder of Black Lives Matter. He is an avowed communist. Some of my friends need to do their research before they support any movement. I don't care what movement, what political party. Do your research. It's called, in business, it's called due diligence. You don't enter into a business matter or business decision without doing your due diligence. And if you don't, you'll be in trouble. Many bad investments have been made because of lack of due diligence. I know, I've done it. Many business decisions have been wrong because of lack of due diligence. I know, because I've made some. We even have clergy leading churches who don't do their due diligence, and they make mistakes from the pulpit, and then that mistake is multiplied by the number of people who heard them and believed it. And what kind of due diligence should a clergyman do? He needs to know history. He needs to know what's going on in the political scene. He needs to know some sociology. He needs to understand theology. And then he will be able to look at the Bible as Holy Writ, as Scripture, and be able to properly interpret it, what it's saying, especially then how to apply it to today. Without due diligence, lots of money changes hands in the so-called church world, and some of it goes to wrong causes. So always do your homework and research. If I was thinking this morning, Nancy, if people ask me what I do, of course, you know, I am a clergyman, have been for many years, but and I've been a college professor, been a magazine editor. You and I, we handle a little book publishing company. And of course, I haven't really preached since the COVID virus. I missed the pulpit, but there are other ways for me to apply my trade and experience. I was thinking this morning, really what I do is I research, I consult, and I write. That's what I do mainly. Yesterday I spent, how many hours do you suppose I spent in front of the computer yesterday?
6 or 8.
6 or 8 hours. Pretty typical for a weekday. But tomorrow being Saturday, I'll put in a number of hours in on the computer to catch up, because I process a lot of email. I do a lot of research. I have people sending me material to look at in a browser, and I look. And I have 2 desktop computers on my desk. Nancy has one on hers. But I keep mine busy because I can be processing email on one and researching something on the other. It's a handy arrangement. And then I print off our own stuff off the printer. Anyway, in socialist countries, laborers were forced to work hard but could own no possessions. The government took them all away. Some of you young people want socialism and you haven't learned how to work yet. If you get socialism in the United States, you will learn how to work. I guarantee you. But let me put it this way. I seldom say this. 2 things, because I don't like it when people say this to me. I'm going to say it to you, trust me. When people say trust me, I think, wait a minute. I'm going to say it, trust me. And then the other thing that I don't like to hear, but I'm going to say it, I promise you. I'm not in a position to promise anybody anything. I promise you. Trust me, I promise you. If you allow socialism to become the government of the United States of America, you will learn the true meaning of work with no real gain. You'll learn how to work. Not only will you learn how to work, but you'll learn how to give up your money, and you'll learn how not to own anything.
Is that called digging your grave?
Yeah, it's sort of like that, digging your own grave, and then standing beside it with one foot already in and the other one on a banana peel. You're ready to go. All right. People with no possessions have nothing with which to be charitable. If you don't have anything to give away, you can't give anything away. So those people who need something, you don't have anything to give them. The term communism, well, socialists believe that when the government finally finishes taking away everyone's possessions, then the world will arrive at an imagined ideal utopia. Now, for those of you who are in the university or university graduates, let me define utopia for you. That means heaven on earth, perfect existence. That's what the word utopia means.
Is that like universal health care that
Oh, now, like universal health care, free?
a certain man that starts with B has said that he would have?
Yes, and by the way, I'll show you my good grammar from my university days and my 90 graduate hours and my 60 postgraduate hours. There ain't no free lunches. Nobody gets by free. So the term communism comes from the Latin word communis, C-O-M-M-U-N-I-S, meaning everything held in common. There will be no private ownership of anything. There will be no privacy. People will not even have control over their own children. We're arriving at a lot of that now. The government will control everything on both the production side and the consumption side. They'll not only tell you what to produce, when to produce it, how to produce it, they will tell you when and how you can consume it. In 1971, John Lennon and his second wife, Yoko Ono, co-wrote the song Imagine, with socialist-themed lyrics, imagine no possessions and no religion too. He was an avowed atheist. The term socialism was coined by French political philosopher Henri de Saint-Simon. 1960 to 1865 was his lifespan. He said it was the opposite of the individual. Use of the term socialism was popularized by mid to late 1800s by European theorists. Now, what's a theorist? Again, for those of you who are educated, a theorist is somebody who has a theory, or they hold to a theory, and the theory is an unproven idea.
Yeah.
When they talk about the theory of evolution, guess what? They're not saying it's a fact, they're saying it's a theory. It's an idea, an unproven idea. Now, I know. I'm not going to get into creationism. And by the way, folks, one of these days, Nancy and I will have guests to interview again, but the COVID virus, we've taken this opportunity for me to editorialize a little bit. The idea of evolution, I know from the study of anatomy that man has almost evolved to the point that he doesn't need an appendix. That's why they can take it out and you go ahead and live. I've had my appendix out for 20 years, more than that, 26 years. I got along without that old thing very nicely. Had my tonsils out 76 years ago. Haven't missed them. Think about that. Now, these are inside body parts. So obviously, we do evolve. In fact, people are taller today than they were on average than when this country was founded. George Washington was tall for his time. He stood head and shoulders above everyone. And remember, King Saul in the Old Testament, king of Israel, he stood head and shoulders above everybody. Tall people were kind of rare, not so rare anymore. When we had an NBA that was really operating, you could watch an NBA basketball game and see a lot of tall people. And now it's not uncommon for parents to look up to their children because the children are taller. So there is a certain amount of evolving that takes place. But remember, Darwin's theory of evolution and the selection of the species is still a theory, an unproven fact. Now, so imagine no possessions and no religion too. Remember, the term socialism was coined to mean opposite of the individual. Use of the term socialism was popularized by mid to late 1800s by European theorists, unproven ideas, such as Karl Marx, that's what he dealt with, Friedrich Engels, both of these were Germans, by the way, Leon Trotsky, who was a Russian, and Antonio Gramsci, where power is taken away from individuals and concentrated into the hands of the state. So what they do, and we have an audience here today, our good buddy Jay Cobb from the Morning Drive, what they do is they take the rights of millions of people as individuals,
because those people don't know things.
and then they transfer those rights to a political body of a few hundred people.
So, because those people probably know all the right things and the answers.
That's right.
And how to take care of people.
And you're being facetious.
Yes, I know.
So then, those hundreds, they hand over power as individuals of hundreds to committees of like a few dozen, and that committee hands that power over to maybe a triumvirate. That means for university students, that's 3 people. And see, I'm putting down university education because it needs to be put down. You're not as smart as you think.
Well, that's like high school too, all the way through.
And you need to put the pressure on your professors and say, teach me, I want to know. And then you need to take responsibility. We have the computer, get on there and do some research. Do your due diligence. Okay. And I'm talking to me too, because I'm a product of all this, many years of education, and now I'm beginning to learn. Jay, can you believe that now, at age 85, with all the years and money spent getting degrees, I'm now beginning to learn?
Mm-hmm.
And don't make it, don't use that excuse that, well, you don't know, you don't have a computer, get one. Go to the library. Wear your mask, go to the library, do something. All right, during Russia's Bolshevik Revolution, Bolsheviks, these are working people, of 1917, socialism became identified as a distinct transition phase between capitalism and communism. The original name of Russia was Russia in our history books, basically, but a few years ago, it became the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, USSR, because Stalin had swept in and taken many other countries captive, and they formed the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. And then later, during the presidency of George Herbert Walker Bush, the first President Bush, things started happening as a result of Ronald Reagan's influence, and the wall in Berlin came down, and all of a sudden, Soviet socialism collapsed in on itself. I guarantee you, young people, if you allow socialism to come to the United States, you will watch the country collapse in on itself. Look at Venezuela. Socialism has never worked in any country where it's been tried. Hasn't worked. The most opportune time to transition is in crisis, or during crises, which is the plural of crisis. Guess what's happening now with so-called demonstrations, which are really riots, and they're happening all around this nation. Portland, 100 and some nights in a row, riots. Now, Portland's not a place to live right now because in the outskirts of Portland, the wildfires are raging, and inside Portland, violence is raging, and people are trying to get out of Portland, and nobody wants to go into Portland. We're talking Portland, Oregon, a major city in the northwest part of the United States. We're seeing violence in Seattle, violence in Chicago, violence still in New York. Don't think that it stopped. It hadn't. Violence in the St. Louis area. Violence in just about every major city across the United States. And we see no let-up in it right now. So things are being put into crisis when you consider the violence coupled with the coronavirus and the wearing of masks and limited seating, what's happening to the economy. The United States is in a crisis mode, and that's when these socialists and communists strike. Mm-hmm. And remember what I told you about the founder of Black Lives Matter. And you can go online and research their platform. They have a platform almost like a political party. Well, like a political party. You can also research the platform, the Democrat Party, Republican Party, and about 32 other political parties. Do your homework. Do your homework. Marx and Frederick Engels explained, they said, conspirators by no means confine themselves to organizing the revolutionary proletariat, that is the working class. Their business consists in spurring it into artificial crises. Artificial. In other words, this is a manufactured crisis. And there are those who talk about the coronavirus being a manufactured crisis. Now, Nancy, you and I, what do we do to regarding the coronavirus? I need to hear from you. Let people know from you what we do about it.
Oh, we wash our hands a lot. We wear our masks whenever we're out.
And you go into a shop, you wear surgical gloves.
Yep, and wear my mask.
And then when she gets back to the car, if I'm waiting in the car, the gloves come off, and we have hand cleanser.
Yep.
Because we are very vulnerable. I'm especially vulnerable. Last Tuesday morning, I had stent number 4. Now, stent is a little spring-like device they insert into a coronary artery to open it up so that you can get blood flow. That I had stent number 4 implanted Tuesday. And so for a couple of days, I was really vulnerable and stayed home, basically.
And if we get out, sometimes you may go in with me, but you're wearing your mask and you're washing your hands. But there's times when you stay in the car.
I'll probably go with her into a store after this broadcast, and I will wear my mask, and I will keep my distance. Mm-hmm. Here's the thing. I had a neighbor tell me yesterday, his wife is an RN, Nancy's a nurse, that his wife is still working a couple of days a week. But for a long time, when they would go into shop, if they saw somebody with sniffles or sneeze or cough in an aisle, they turned around and went around a different aisle. They didn't walk through that spray. And then when they when they got home, they would wash their hands, unload the groceries, and then wash their hands again after disposing of the bags that they brought the groceries home in.
Right.
They've been doing this for years. And we've been their neighbors for 15 years. I don't remember them ever having a cold or the flu. Well, the big manager of Axe Media Group studio here is saying we have 5 minutes, Nancy. 5 minutes is a long time when you're on the air. I can do a lot. I could tap dance. I could sing. Well, not today. That's a treat. I'm going to hang out there, dangle, get people to tune back in. So the term capitalism is where individuals with their own money or their financial capital could invest and have a business providing goods or services, which is the production side. They then earn a profit, which they could decide how to spend on the consumption side. So there's more freedom in capitalism. And when there's freedom to do business, it's good for business. Mm-hmm. If you don't stand to gain anything, why work harder or why build a business? Karl Marx wrote in the Critique of the Gotha Program, Part 4. Here's what he said, and I quote, "Between capitalist and communist society, there lies the period of the revolutionary transformation. We need to be aware of what's happening on the streets of America today." Lenin considered socialism as the transition phase from capitalism to communism, and here's what he said, I quote, "The goal of socialism is communism." Now, communism is operating in China. Let's go back and see what's happened with socialists, extreme socialists, and communism. Marx, Lenin, Trotsky, Stalin, responsible for the deaths of millions. They killed many more people than Hitler, for instance, and he killed too many. He killed millions of people. Mao Zedong, China, killed millions of people. And most people have forgotten Pol Pot in Cambodia. In fact, not even taught in history books in the universities anymore. Pol Pot was the premier of and the communist leader of Cambodia, and had the killing fields. They made a movie about it, and they built basically earthen dams with human skulls holding the dirt in place. He killed millions of people. Yes, Jason.
I've heard a statistic that says that communism in the 20th century is responsible for the untimely deaths of more than 50 million people.
Oh, more than that. More than that. Stalin alone did that. Yeah.
And the key word being untimely death.
Right. Now, if you get an opportunity sometime, research it and come up with a total number, considering Pol Pot, Mao Zedong, Stalin, and see how many people they killed. And, of course, we've had some communist dictators in South America killed their fair share, including Fidel Castro in Cuba. Remember Nicaragua. Remember some of those places. Now Venezuela. Anyway, in these few minutes that we have left, I want to tell you that Nancy and I are pleased to have our usual viewers who catch up with us either live or by recorded message. Shirley Simpson and Judy Nickel and Galen Garrett, Jane Campbell, Jerry Chambers, and the list goes on and on. Oh, Tammy Renee Harris over in Illinois, Sandy Hinkle up in north central Missouri. Dear precious friends of ours, Tammy, we are still praying for your beautiful little dog, a little cuddly thing called Sassy, for her healing. Tammy elected not to have Sassy go through surgery to remove a tangerine-sized tumor, and instead is just loving her little pet and trying to keep her comfortable until she lives out her days. So Tammy loves Sassy, and we love Tammy. That means we've never met Sassy, but we have to love her because we know how important pets are. We have the most beautiful kitty in the world that's ever been, who lives in our house. And well, we live in her house. Her name is Hannah, and we love her dearly. And other people love their pets. That's just okay. It's okay. It's a good thing. Okay, I wanted to, I don't know if I have it with me. I hope I do. I made a copy of, oh yeah, the Acts News. Now my red ink was about out, and this is not a typical Acts Media Group production because their program to lay it out wasn't working. So, but here's Marriages by Design. You can get this online. Go and look it up. There's a thing about what is Acts Ministry, Acts Ministry affiliates. There's an article I wrote, When is Enough Enough, upstairs over a vacant lot. But on the back, here's your Acts Television Network schedule of shows. Go to Acts Media Group, click on Acts TV tab along the top of the home page, or check out our YouTube channel. And here's the Morning Drive, Brighter Living, Sacred Ways, The Spirit in America, Crime Time, The New Gold Standard, Open-Ended, Penny for Your Thoughts, Power Hour, Morning Mouth with Johnny Rooster, Happy Hour with old Dr. Paul and sweet little Miss Nancy. And then they have some new afternoon and evening shows. All of those are morning. House of God Ministries, Souls Harbor, Stall's Ministry, and Word and Song. Anita can sing. She's a good singer. Exposing the Candy-Coated Cult. How about that with Nemra Roden? Journey of Truth. Children's programming to be announced. Besides Still Waters with Joni Buchanan, more children's programming. So tune in, actsmediagroup.com, click on Acts TV or YouTube Acts Ministry or Acts Media Group. Okay, what are we left with here? We're done? We're off. We're all finished. We're all finished. We'll look forward to seeing you next Friday. Good Lord willing, the creek don't rise. Meantime, you stay blessed.